When the perfect routine of a powerful family begins to fall apart from within, a father discovers that the real danger is not always outside the door. The Denver sky threatened rain that autumn Thursday. Heavy clouds hung over the city as Andrew Mitchell finished a video conference in his office on Downtown Avenue. At 42, his dark hair already showing silver strands at the temples, the businessman turned off his computer and observed the panoramic view of the Colorado capital through the glass wall that occupied the entire side of his office. "Should we cancel the 5 o'clock meeting, Mr. Mitchell?" "The forecast calls for a heavy storm," asked Martha, his secretary of over a decade. Andrew consulted his wristwatch, a gift from his late father, and nodded. "Please cancel it. I'll take the opportunity to get home early today." In the parking garage, while driving his black SUV through congested traffic, Andrew thought about Emma, his 6-year-old daughter. The girl's smile was the force that drove him forward, especially since his separation from Sarah 3 years ago. The end of their marriage had been painful but amicable, irreconcilable differences, as the official document stated. In reality, they were two people who, as they built their careers, had grown apart until they became almost strangers, sharing the same roof. Sarah now lived in Chicago, coordinating sustainable architecture projects. She visited her daughter twice a month, maintaining a cordial relationship with her ex-husband. The arrangement worked well, although Andrew sometimes wondered if Emma felt her mother's absence more than she showed. As CEO of Horizon Tech, one of Colorado's leading technology development companies, Andrew had managed to adjust his schedule to be present in his daughter's life. He attended school meetings, took her to pediatrician appointments, and showed up for ballet recitals. Of course, he needed help, which is why he had hired Jessica, a nanny recommended by a colleague just over 8 months ago. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jessica, 32, had a degree in education and experience with children. Emma seemed to like her, and the routine flowed smoothly. Life followed its predictable, structured, and secure course. But in recent weeks, something had changed. There were small signs almost imperceptible. Emma seemed quieter during dinner. Her drawings, once colorful and cheerful, now displayed darker colors. Some nights, Andrew found her hugging her favorite teddy bear, crying softly without explaining why. She must miss her mother, he initially thought. Sarah had been working on an overseas project and hadn't visited her daughter for almost a month. Or maybe it was just a phase. Children go through phases, don't they? That's what Jessica suggested when he mentioned his concerns, and he tried to convince himself of that. Weeks ago, driven by an uneasiness he couldn't name, Andrew had installed security cameras at home, just as a precaution, he justified to himself, without really believing he would find anything concerning. The cameras were discreet, almost invisible, installed at strategic points in the living room, kitchen, and hallways. Not in private areas, of course. He respected everyone's privacy. It was just an extra security measure. But he hadn't checked the recordings yet. Something urgent always came up at work. An unexpected meeting, a contract to review. And deep down, perhaps there was a fear of finding something he preferred not to know. Traffic moved slowly as the first raindrops began to fall. Andrew turned. On the radio, tuning to a classical music station, Bach, one of his discreet passions. His cell phone rang, showing the name of Richard, his business partner. "I'm heading home early today, Richard," he informed before the other could speak. "We can resolve this tomorrow." "It's about the Korean investor. It needs to be today," Richard insisted. 20 minutes at most." Andrew sighed, looking at the increasingly dark sky. "Send me the documents by email. I'll review them at home and return your call." The rain grew heavier when he entered the Oakwood Hills neighborhood, one of Denver's most affluent areas. The complex where he lived was one of the most exclusive in the region, with a privileged view of the Rocky Mountains. Large mansions and luxury buildings formed a landscape of discreet opulence, typical of the elite. His building, with only 2 apartments per floor, stood imposingly. The doorman, Mr. Gerald, an elderly gentleman with white hair and military posture, greeted him with surprise. Coming home early today, Mr. Mitchell. What miracle is this? The miracle is this rain, Mr. Gerald. I've been missing it. In the panoramic elevator, Andrew felt a strange anxiety growing in his chest. It was an inexplicable feeling, like a premonition. He tried to push it away, imagining Emma's surprise at seeing him arrive early. Perhaps they could watch that panda movie she had been wanting to see, or put together the new puzzle he had bought over the weekend. He opened the door silently, intending to surprise his daughter. The spacious apartment, decorated in beige and blue tones, was immersed in an unusual silence. None of the cartoons Emma usually watched after school, nor the children's music Jessica typically played during activities. "Emma?" "Daddy's home," he called, leaving his briefcase on the console by the entrance. There was no response, just the sound of the rain now falling heavily, beating against the windows as if trying to get in. The silence bothered him. Andrew walked through the living room, noticing small details out of place: a teddy bear fallen on its side, an open book on the carpet, a glass with half-finished juice on the shelf, the scene of an abruptly interrupted playtime. He went to his daughter's room, with its lavender walls and star stickers that glowed in the dark. The bed was made, but there was no sign of the girl. He returned to the hallway, feeling his heart accelerate for no apparent reason. That's when he heard it. An almost imperceptible sound, like a contained sob. It came from the direction of the playroom. He approached quietly, making no noise. The door was ajar, allowing a partial view of the interior. Emma was sitting on the floor, head down, arms hugging her knees. Her small body trembled slightly. Near her, Jessica gestured, her face contorted in an expression Andrew had never seen before. "How many times do I need to repeat?" The nanny's voice was low, but filled with a coldness that shocked him. "Disobedient children don't deserve attention. You'll stay here until you learn." Emma raised her tear-stained face. "I'm sorry, Miss Jessica. I just wanted to—" "I don't care what—" "Who wanted?" Jessica cut her off. "Your father is paying for you to be well-behaved, not to throw tantrums. If he knew how you behave when he's not around—" Andrew froze, his hand against the wall. A wave of contradictory sensations invaded him: shock, disbelief, anger, guilt. The scene before him seemed unreal, like watching a movie where his daughter and the woman he trusted were unrecognizable characters. He retreated silently, heading to his office. With trembling hands, he turned on the computer and accessed the security system. He needed to know if this was an isolated incident or part of a pattern. The first raindrops had transformed into a deluge outside, as if the sky also felt his anguish. As he waited for the images to load, Andrew knew that Thursday would mark a before and after in his life. Whatever he discovered in the recordings would change everything: his routine, his priorities, his world view. On the computer screen, the security cameras began to reveal the truth that had been hidden in his own home. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The security camera images appeared on the computer screen, each more disturbing than the last. Andrew felt his stomach turn as he observed the subtle cruelty with which Jessica treated his daughter when he wasn't present. There were no obvious physical aggressions, but the psychological violence was undeniable, and perhaps even more devastating. A video from 3 days ago. Emma had spilled a glass of milk, a common accident for any 6-year-old. In the recording, the girl looked at the spilled liquid with an expression of panic. "I'm sorry, Miss Jessica. It was an accident," she said, her voice already trembling. Jessica's reaction was disproportionate. "Look what you've done. It's always the same thing, Emma. Your mother left because she couldn't stand your clumsy ways anymore. Now clean this up, and no dessert today." The girl, kneeling on the kitchen floor, wiped her tears with one hand while trying to dry the milk with the other. Her expression of guilt and shame was unbearable to watch. In another recording, Emma showed a drawing she had made at school, clearly proud of her creation. Jessica barely looked. "This is horrible, Emma. The other children draw much better." "Then you. Put this away before your father sees it and gets disappointed." The drawing, colourful and full of childish details, was folded and hidden by Emma herself, who muttered an almost inaudible, "Sorry." The sequence of small cruelties continued, Jessica denying food as punishment, making Emma repeat lessons until exhaustion, threatening to tell her father lies about her behaviour, isolating her in her room for hours for trivial infractions. Andrew paused the playback, unable to continue watching. A physical pain settled in his chest, a mixture of guilt and anger. How had he not noticed before? How had he brought that woman into his home, entrusting her with the most precious being in his life? The signs were there. Emma's growing silence, her frightened look when she made small mistakes, the way she constantly sought approval. Andrew had attributed these changes to her, mother's absence to the natural process of growing up, to anything but the truth that now revealed itself, as clear as it was painful. A particularly strong thunderclap shook the windows, bringing him back to immediate reality. He needed to act, but not impulsively. Emma deserved more than an explosion of anger that would only increase her trauma. He breathed deeply, trying to organize his thoughts. First, he would gather more evidence. Then, he would confront Jessica in a controlled manner. And above all, he needed to regain his daughter's trust, show her that her home was a safe place. He turned off the computer and returned to the hallway. The playroom door was now completely closed. Andrew knocked lightly before entering. "May." "I come in?" he asked, opening the door slowly. The scene had changed. Emma was sitting at the colourful little table, apparently concentrating on an activity book. Jessica, seated close to her, displayed a smile that now seemed like a grotesque mask. "Look who came home early today, Emma. What a nice surprise, isn't it?" The nanny's voice was filled with an artificial sweetness that made Andrew's stomach turn again. Emma raised her head, and for a brief moment, Andrew saw fear in her eyes before she forced a smile. "Hi, Daddy." "We were just finishing homework," explained Jessica, closing the book. "Emma is getting smarter every day, aren't you, dear?" The girl nodded mechanically, not looking directly at either adult. "That's good," replied Andrew, striving to keep his voice neutral. "Emma, how about we go to the kitchen and make some hot chocolate? It's perfect weather for that." His daughter's face lit up for an instant, but her eyes sought Jessica, as if asking permission. This small unconscious gesture was like a knife to Andrew. "Of course," Jessica intervened, the smile still fixed on her face. "You two deserve some time together. I'll organize these things here and join you soon." In the kitchen, while heating the milk and preparing the chocolate, Andrew observed Emma discreetly. She was sitting on the high stool, swinging her legs in the air, too silent for a child her age. "How was school today, Princess?" he asked, trying to initiate a natural conversation. Emma shrugged. "Normal." "Did you learn anything new?" "The teacher taught us about the regions of America," she replied, her voice low. "I drew the Grand Canyon." "That's great. Can I see it?" The girl hesitated. "It's not very good." "I'm sure it's wonderful. You draw very well." Emma shook her head. "Miss Jessica said it's ugly, that I should try harder." Andrew felt his blood boil, but kept a serene expression. "You know, Emma, sometimes people have different opinions about things. I always think your drawings are beautiful." A shy smile appeared on his daughter's face. "Really?" "Absolute truth." He served the hot chocolate in 2 mugs, adding marshmallows to Emma's, a secret between them. "And how about if tomorrow we spend the day together? We could go to the park, then have lunch at that restaurant with the big slide. What do you think?" Emma's eyes widened. "But tomorrow is a weekday, don't you have work?" "Some things are more important than work. You, for example." At that moment, Jessica entered the kitchen. Her gaze briefly paused on the marshmallows, before she smiled at Andrew. "Hot chocolate? How delicious. May I join you?" Before Andrew could respond, his phone rang. It was Richard again. "I need to answer this," he said, stepping away a few paces. "Emma, start drinking your chocolate before it gets cold." The conversation with Richard was brief, but when Andrew returned to the kitchen, he noticed that the atmosphere had changed. Emma was drinking her chocolate in silence, her eyes fixed on the mug. Jessica was on her phone, apparently unconcerned. "Is everything okay?" he asked, looking directly at his daughter. "Emma spilled a little chocolate on the counter," Jessica explained with a slight sigh. "But we already cleaned it up, didn't we, dear? Accidents happen." There was something in the nanny's tone that made Andrew realize more had been said during his brief absence. Something between the lines, in the expressions, in the heavy silence that now hung in the kitchen. "I'm going to take a bath," Emma announced suddenly, leaving half the chocolate in the mug. "I'm tired." "I'll help you," Jessica offered, standing. "That's not necessary," Andrew intervened quickly. "I'll help my daughter myself today." A flash of irritation passed through Jessica's eyes so quickly it could have been imagination. "As you wish. I'll take the opportunity to prepare dinner then." In the bathroom, while helping Emma wash, Andrew noticed she was unusually silent, avoiding his gaze. "Did something happen while I was answering the phone, honey?" Emma shook her head, but her eyes filled with tears. "You know you can tell me anything, right? Anything at all. Daddy will never get angry with you for telling the truth." The girl bit her lower lip, clearly conflicted. "Miss Jessica said if I tell you'll be sad with me, that you'll send me to a boarding school far away." Andrew felt as if he'd been punched. "Emma, look at me. Never, ever would I send you away. You are the most important person in my life. More important than your work. Much more important." Emma hugged him then, wetting his dress shirt with bathwater, and with tears she finally allowed herself to shed. Andrew wrapped her in his arms, silently vowing that nothing and no one would ever make her feel insecure again. After putting Emma to bed and reading her favorite story, Andrew watched her fall asleep, his chest still tight with everything he had discovered that day. His daughter's peaceful breathing contrasted with the storm of emotions inside him. Back in the living room, he found Jessica organizing her bag, apparently getting ready to leave. "Andrew, I need to talk to you about Emma," she said, in her usual professional tone. "I'm concerned about some behaviors I've been noticing. I think she's really missing her mother." He nodded slightly, studying the face of the woman who for months had betrayed his trust. "I agree we need to talk, but not now. Tomorrow I'll stay home with Emma. I'd like you to come as usual. We have many pending matters." A slight furrowing of eyebrows was the only indication of Jessica's surprise. "As you wish. Until tomorrow, then." When the door closed behind her, Andrew felt the weight of the day collapse on his shoulders. In the quietness of the apartment, with the sound of rain as his only company, he began to plan the next steps. It wouldn't be an easy conversation, but it was necessary. His cell phone vibrated. A message from Sarah. "How's our princess? I'm returning to the States next week. I miss her." Andrew looked at the profile picture, showing mother and daughter smiling in a park. Sarah would need to know what was happening. Even with the distance and differences, they had always been united by their love for their daughter. Together they would find a way to help Emma overcome this trauma. As he typed a response, Andrew already knew his life had changed forever. On that rainy Thursday. Some revelations don't allow a return to who we were before them. The next morning dawned with the sky still heavy, but the rain had given a truce. Andrew woke up early, after a night of restless sleep. His dreams were populated with images of Emma crying and asking for help, while he ran through endless corridors without being able to reach her. He prepared a hearty breakfast and mentally organized the day ahead. He called Richard and his secretary, informing them he wouldn't be going to the office. There were urgent family matters to resolve. Richard didn't hide his surprise. In almost 15 years of partnership, Andrew rarely prioritized personal matters over business. "Did something serious happen?" asked his partner, genuinely concerned. "Let's say I'm reassessing some priorities," Andrew replied, without going into details. "I'll update you soon." Before Emma woke up, he made 2 more important calls. The first was to Patricia Collins, the principal of the school where his daughter studied. The second to Dr. Laura Wilson, a renowned child psychologist he had met at a charity event the previous year. With Patricia, he scheduled a meeting for early afternoon. With Dr. Wilson, he managed to get an emergency consultation for the end of the day. Both perceived the urgency in his voice, and were willing to help immediately. As he prepared Emma's favorite breakfast, pancakes with chocolate syrup, Andrew heard light footsteps approaching. The girl appeared at the kitchen door, still in pajamas, her brown hair disheveled, and her inseparable teddy bear in her arms. "Good morning, Princess," he smiled, placing a plate on the table. "Did you sleep well?" Emma nodded, climbing onto the stool. Her eyes scanned the kitchen as if looking for something or someone. "Didn't Miss Jessica come today?" she finally asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "She'll come later. Today we're spending the day together, remember? Just the two of us." A genuine smile illuminated the girl's face. "Can we really go to that restaurant? With a slide? Definitely. And afterward, if you want, we can stop by the mall to buy that new game you saw in the commercial." Emma bit a pancake, thoughtful. "But Miss Jessica said games distract from studies, that I need to focus more on lessons." Andrew felt a pang of anger, but kept his tone light. "You know, Emma, studying is very important, but playing is too. In fact, children learn by playing, and you're a very smart girl who deserves to have fun." The conversation flowed more naturally during breakfast. Emma told him about a science project at school, about her friend Julia who had gotten a hamster, about the music teacher who had praised her voice. Small fragments of daily life that Andrew now realized he had missed while dedicated to building an empire that ironically was for her. After breakfast, while Emma got dressed, he checked the security camera recordings again, saving specific excerpts in a secure folder. The anger he felt toward Jessica was immense, but he needed to act with intelligence, not for revenge, but for justice, and mainly for Emma's well-being. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Jessica arrived punctually, as always. She wore a discreet outfit in pastel tones, her hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, the professional expression as usual. "Good morning, Andrew. Is Emma ready?" He invited her in, indicating the living room. "Emma is finishing getting ready. We need to talk, Jessica." Something in his tone must have alerted the nanny, as her smile faltered for an instant. "Of course. Is there a problem?" Sat face to face, Andrew chose his words carefully. "I've noticed changes in Emma's behavior over the past few months. She's quieter, more insecure. Yesterday, when I came home early, I realized something was wrong." Jessica adjusted her posture, assuming an air of professional concern. "I've noticed these changes too. As I mentioned yesterday, I believe it's because she misses her mother. Sarah has been absent longer than usual this time." "It's interesting you mention that," Andrew continued, keeping his tone neutral, "because I installed security cameras at home a few weeks ago, as a precaution." Jessica's face visibly paled. "Cameras?" "Yes, and last night I watched some recordings." The silence that followed was dense, charged with tension. Jessica clutched her purse on her lap, her knuckles white from the force. "I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw enough." Andrew cut her off, his voice finally revealing his contained anger. "I saw you humiliating my daughter, denying food as punishment, isolating her, diminishing her self-esteem. I saw you using her mother's absence as a manipulation tool." Jessica stood up abruptly. "You're distorting things. Education requires discipline, Andrew. Emma needs limits." "Don't confuse education with psychological cruelty. What you did goes far beyond setting limits." "Do you intend to fire me based on some out-of-context videos?" Her voice took on a challenging tone. "I have excellent references. No one will believe that I, a certified educator, would mistreat a child." Andrew remained seated, controlling his breathing. "I'm not interested in what other people believe, Jessica. What matters is what I saw and what Emma experienced under your care. And yes, I am terminating our contract effective immediately." For a moment it seemed Jessica would counter-argue. Then her expression changed, hardening. "You'll regret this. Emma needs discipline, not a father who spoils her and then wonders why she doesn't develop properly." Before Andrew could respond, Emma appeared in the hallway, dressed in her favorite blue overalls and colorful sneakers. Upon seeing Jessica, she visibly hesitated. "Come here, Princess," Andrew called, extending his hand. Miss Jessica is leaving. This he say. Girl approached cautiously, stopping beside her father. Emma, remember what we talked about regarding behavior when your father isn't around, said Jessica with a forced smile. Be a good girl. Andrew felt Emma's small hand squeeze his tightly. The conversation is over, Jessica. Please leave my house. Minutes later, with the door closed and Jessica finally out of their lives, Andrew knelt to be at Emma's height. She's not coming back, is she? Asked the girl, her large eyes fixed on his. No, she's not coming back. Does that make you sad? Emma shook her head slowly. No, she was different when you weren't around. She didn't like when I made noise or when I dropped things. She said, I was a disappointment. The word coming from the mouth of a 6-year-old was like a physical blow. Andrew hugged his daughter tightly, fighting against the emotion that threatened to overflow. Emma, listen carefully. You have never, ever been a disappointment. You are the best thing that has ever happened in my life. And I promise that, from now on, I'll be much more present. The morning passed lightly, with father and daughter enjoying the simplicity of being together. They went to the park, where Emma played on the swing and slide, laughing more openly than Andrew had seen in months. Then, as promised, they had lunch at the restaurant with the playroom. During lunch, Andrew discreetly observed his daughter, noticing how she checked if she was behaving properly, how she hesitated before asking for something, how she seemed surprised when he encouraged her to have fun. In the early afternoon, as planned, they headed to Emma's school for the meeting with Patricia Collins. The principal received them in her welcoming office, decorated with drawings and works from the students. Emma, why don't you go to the library to choose a book while I talk with your father? Patricia suggested kindly. Ms. Denise is there, and will be happy to help you. When they were alone, the principal's expression turned serious. I was concerned about your call, Andrew. What's happening? He briefly related the situation, without going into graphic details, but making clear the gravity of what he had discovered. Patricia listened attentively, her face showing increasing concern. Unfortunately, this explains a lot, she said, when he finished. In recent weeks, we've noticed significant changes in Emma's behavior. She, who was always participative and sociable, has become more withdrawn. Teacher Luciana mentioned that Emma seems excessively worried about getting things right, to the point of crying when she makes small mistakes. Patricia opened a folder on the table, showing some drawings made by Emma. Unlike the colorful and cheerful works from the beginning of the year, these used dark colors and presented solitary or sad figures. Children's art often reveals what children cannot express in words, explained the principal. These recent drawings by Emma indicate anxiety and insecurity. Andrew observed the works, feeling the weight of guilt increase. How had he not paid more attention? What can I do to help her? He asked, determined to fix the situation. You've already taken the first step by removing the source of the trauma, Patricia replied. Now Emma needs time, patience, and possibly psychological counseling. It will take time for her to rebuild her confidence and security. I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Laura Wilson for today. Patricia nodded approvingly. Excellent choice. She's one of the best in the field. And on our part, the pedagogical team will be attentive to support Emma during this process. Before they left, the principal gently held Andrew's arm. Don't blame yourself excessively. You're acting now, and that's what matters. Emma is a resilient and loved child. With proper support, she will overcome this. On the way to Dr. Wilson's office, Andrew received a call from Sarah. She had managed to advance her return to the United States and would arrive in 2 days. The news brought unexpected relief. Despite their differences, Sarah was a dedicated mother, and her presence would be fundamental for Emma at this moment. The psychologist's office was a cozy space, decorated in soft tones, with toys and games, strategically arranged. Dr. Wilson, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, first spoke with Andrew, while Emma explored the waiting room with an assistant. Emotional abuse leaves invisible scars, but no less painful ones, explained the psychologist after hearing his account. The fact that Emma is so young is both a vulnerability and an advantage. Vulnerability, because young children deeply absorb negative messages. Advantage because with proper intervention, they have great capacity for recovery. How long until she returns to being like before? Asked Andrew, anxious for a prognosis. Each child has their own pace, but the goal isn't to return to what was before. That can create unnecessary pressure. The goal is to help her process what she experienced and move forward, building new strengths from this experience. Dr. Wilson then spoke with Emma alone, using games and drawings to establish an initial connection. At the end of the session, she scheduled bi-weekly meetings and provided specific guidelines for Andrew to follow at home. It was already night when father and daughter returned to the apartment. Emma was exhausted, but in a different way, not from the weight of anxiety, but from the day full of activities and emotions. As he helped her prepare for bed, Andrew realized that something fundamental had changed between them. A new complicity had been born from that difficult day, a silent understanding that they were in this together, protecting each other. "Daddy," called Emma, already lying down with her teddy bear. "Will Mommy be angry when she finds out about—" "Miss Jessica, not with you, Princess, never with you. And will you have to work a lot tomorrow because of the day you lost today?" Andrew smiled, stroking his daughter's hair. "Some things will change from now on. Work remains important, but you come first, always." When Emma finally fell asleep, Andrew remained by her side, watching her peaceful breathing. Dr. Wilson's words echoed in his mind. The trauma doesn't need to define her future. With consistent love and proper support, this can be just a difficult page in a beautiful story. In his office later, he began making notes about necessary changes in his professional routine. Perhaps it was time to delegate more responsibilities, to restructure the company, to allow a better balance between work and family. Important decisions that could no longer wait. The phone rang. It was Richard again. "Finally. I've been trying to contact you all day. The Koreans are pressing for an answer by tomorrow. We need to close this deal, Andrew. There are millions at stake." Andrew looked at the half-open door to Emma's room, where the nightlight projected stars on the ceiling. "Richard, we need to talk about changes in the company," he said, with a calmness that surprised even himself. "From now on, my hours will be different, and some priorities too." The silence on the other end of the line was followed by a resigned sigh. "This has to do with Emma, doesn't it?" "It has to do with what really matters," replied Andrew, "and tomorrow I'll explain everything to you." As he hung up, he felt a certainty he hadn't experienced in a long time. The path ahead would be challenging, would require adjustments and sacrifices, but for the first time in a long time, he had the conviction that he was making decisions based on the right values. The rain returned to fall outside, lighter now, almost a caress on the sleeping city. Andrew closed his eyes, silently thanking that Thursday which, despite the pain, had restored his clarity about what really mattered in his life. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. 2 days passed, bringing subtle yet significant transformations to the Mitchell family's routine. Andrew reorganized his work schedule, transferring meetings and delegating projects that he would previously have considered unthinkable to entrust to others. Richard, after the long conversation in which Andrew explained the situation without going into intimate details, proved surprisingly understanding. "You've built this empire for years, Andrew. It's more than time to reap the fruits and live." "A little," said his partner with wisdom Andrew hadn't expected. "And to be honest, I always thought you worked too much." Emma, in turn, seemed to blossom a little more with each hour. Without Jessica's oppressive presence, her vibrant personality began to reappear, albeit timidly. In the 2 previous nights, Andrew noticed she slept more peacefully, without the nightmares that had become common. On that sunny Saturday morning, the apartment was filled with the aroma of fresh coffee and pancakes when the doorbell rang. Andrew opened the door, finding Sarah with a rolling suitcase and an expression of contained concern. "Where is she?" asked Sarah, dispensing with formal greetings. "In the living room, watching cartoons." Sarah entered quickly, leaving her suitcase in the hallway. Upon seeing her mother, Emma let out a cry of joy and ran in her direction. Sarah hugged her tightly, lifting her off the floor and spinning her in the air. "My love, I missed you so much," she exclaimed, covering her daughter's face with kisses. "How tall you are. You've grown so much this month." Andrew observed the reunion with a mixture of relief and melancholy. Sarah was 39, but maintained the elegance and vitality that had always characterized her. Her brown hair was shorter since the last visit, a modern cut that perfectly framed her delicate features. As much as the marriage hadn't worked out, he had never stopped admiring her intelligence and determination. "Mom, did you bring a present for me?" asked Emma, her eyes shining with expectation. Sarah laughed, putting her down. "Of course I did. But first, how about having breakfast together? I'm starving after that flight." In the kitchen, while Emma ate animatedly, telling her mother about her new game and ballet classes, Andrew and Sarah's eyes met several times, filled with a silent conversation they would have later. After breakfast, Sarah gave Emma a traditional Japanese doll, beautifully dressed in a colorful kimono. "It's a kokeshi," she explained. "Japanese girls keep them as protective amulets and friendship." Emma hugged the doll with reverence. "She's beautiful. I'll call her Yuki." "What a perfect name," approved Sarah. "Now, how about finding a special place for Yuki in your room? Daddy and I need to talk for a little bit." When Emma left, Sarah's smile disappeared, giving way to a serious expression. "I want to know exactly what happened, Andrew." "Everything." In the office, with the door closed, he recounted the events of that Thursday and what he had discovered afterward, even showing some selected excerpts from the recordings. Sarah watched in silence, her face pale, her eyes watery. "How did we not notice before?" she murmured, more to herself than to him. "How did we let this happen?" "I ask myself the same question every day," confessed Andrew. "But Dr. Wilson says there's no point in blaming ourselves now. What's important is how we're going to help Emma from here on out." Sarah nodded, discreetly wiping away a tear. "I've already consulted a lawyer. We can file a lawsuit against this woman, ensure she never works with children again." "I've already initiated legal proceedings," informed Andrew, "but the priority now is Emma. Dr. Wilson recommended that we maintain a stable routine, that we be consistent, and above all, that we make her feel safe." "I agree," said Sarah, recovering her usual pragmatic posture, "and that's why I want to propose something." Andrew raised his eyebrows, intrigued. Sarah had always been direct, a quality he admired in her, even when it caused friction. "I'm considering moving back to Denver," she announced. "Not permanently, but more frequently. Maybe rent an apartment in the same neighborhood. Emma needs both of us now, more than ever." The proposal caught Andrew by surprise. Sarah had built a solid career in Chicago, with important projects and professional recognition. Returning to Denver, even partially, would represent a considerable sacrifice. "Are you sure?" "Your work." "My daughter comes first," she interrupted with the same conviction he had felt days before. "Besides, I can coordinate projects remotely. I've already spoken with my partners. They understand the situation." At that moment, Andrew felt a renewed admiration for his ex-wife. As much as their differences had been irreconcilable as a couple, as parents they had always been in sync. "Emma will love having you around," he said sincerely. "And to be honest, I'll appreciate the support too. I'm restructuring my professional life to be more present, but there are still challenges." Sarah smiled, a light smile he hadn't seen in a long time. "We're a team when it comes to her, we always have been." The rest of the day passed in an almost festive atmosphere. Sarah unpacked other gifts, children's books, a T-shirt with Planet designs, artisanal chocolates, and they spent hours together like the family they once had been. For Emma, it was a perfect day, having the two people she loved most entirely dedicated to her. Late in the afternoon, while Emma took a nap, Sarah and Andrew sat on the apartment's balcony, watching the sunset over the Rocky Mountains. "She seems well considering everything," commented Sarah, absent-mindedly stirring her wineglass. "But I noticed small things. The way she checks if she's doing something right. How she apologizes for trivial things." "Yes," agreed Andrew. Dr. Wilson says these are conditioned responses from emotional abuse. It will take time for her to feel completely safe again. I never imagined we would go through something like this, confessed Sarah, her voice low. We always worried about accidents, illnesses, external dangers, and it ended up being someone we invited into our home. Andrew nodded, sharing the same somber thought. The worst part is that Jessica's references were impeccable. I checked everything before hiring her. Some people are experts at creating masks, replied Sarah, but this won't happen again. We'll be more attentive. The silence that followed was comfortable, like in the best moments of their marriage. For an instant, Andrew wondered how things would have been if they had managed to preserve that complicity as a couple, and not just as parents. "And what about us?" Sarah suddenly asked, as if reading his thoughts. "How are we going to manage this new dynamic? Me living part-time here, both more present in Emma's life? One day at a time," he suggested. "No pressure, no expectations beyond her well-being." Sarah smiled, raising her glass in a silent toast. One day at a time. The next morning, Sunday, they decided to take Emma to City Park, one of Denver's most beautiful green spaces. The day was perfect. Blue sky, mild temperature, a light breeze that swayed the treetops. Emma ran ahead, occasionally stopping to observe a bird or pick a flower. "She loves this place," commented Andrew. "We used to come almost every weekend, but in recent months—" "You got too busy," completed Sarah, without accusation in her voice. "That happens to all of us. The routine, the responsibilities. We lose sight of what's essential." "It won't happen again," he promised, watching Emma, who was now feeding the ducks in the lake. They found a bench under the shade of a large tree and sat side by side, keeping their eyes on Emma, who was playing a few meters away. "I've been thinking," began Sarah hesitantly, "maybe we should consider a different approach now." "What do you mean?" "Instead of hiring another nanny, we could set up an alternative arrangement. When you can't be with Emma, I'll stay. When neither of us can, maybe your parents or my sister. People she knows and trusts." The idea made sense. Andrew's parents, despite their age, adored their granddaughter and always offered to take care of her. And Rebecca, Sarah's sister, lived in Denver and had a close relationship with Emma. "That could work," he agreed, "at least until Emma feels safe, again with someone outside the family." "Exactly. And we can start looking for full-time schools with extracurricular activities she enjoys, ballet, swimming, music, whatever she prefers." As they discussed the practical details, a shadow crossed Emma's face, who was running toward them. She stopped abruptly, looking at a point behind them with an expression of pure fear. Andrew and Sarah turned simultaneously, following their daughter's gaze. A few meters away, walking through the park with an elderly couple, was Jessica. They say, unexpected encounter froze time for an instant. Jessica saw them and stopped too, her face registering first surprise, then contained anger. The elderly couple, probably her parents, looked in their direction with curiosity. Emma ran to Sarah's arms, hiding her face. "I don't want to talk to her, Mommy, please." "You don't have to, my love," Sarah reassured, hugging her protectively. "We won't talk to her." Andrew stood up, instinctively placing himself between his family and Jessica. Their gazes met. His firm, hers defiant. For a tense moment it seemed Jessica would approach, but then she turned her back and continued in another direction with her parents, casting a last look filled with resentment. "Is she going to do something to me, Daddy?" asked Emma with a trembling voice, when Jessica finally disappeared from view. Andrew knelt before his daughter, holding her little hands. "No, Princess, she will never come near you again. Mommy and I promise." The incident shortened the outing. Emma became agitated, constantly looking around as if expecting to see Jessica at any moment. They decided to return home where she would feel safer. On the way, Sarah held Andrew's arm, speaking softly, so that Emma, walking ahead of them, wouldn't hear. "We need to expedite that legal process. I don't want to risk encounters like this." "I'll call the lawyer first thing tomorrow morning," he assured. "And maybe we should consider a temporary restraining order." At home, Emma took time to calm down. She jumped at every noise, repeatedly asked if the doors were locked. Only when Sarah suggested a painting session, an activity that always calmed the girl, did she begin to relax. At night, after putting Emma to bed, Sarah found Andrew on the balcony, contemplating the city lights. "Did she fall asleep?" he asked. "Finally, I had to read 3 stories and promise I would stay in the room next door." Andrew sighed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. A 5-second encounter, and all the progress seems to have disappeared. "It hasn't disappeared," Sarah corrected, sitting beside him. "It's just a setback. Emma is stronger than we think, Andrew, and so are we." He looked at his ex-wife, admiring her strength and optimism. He had forgotten how Sarah could be a safe harbor in times of storm, a quality he hadn't always valued during the marriage. "I'm glad you're here," he confessed. "I don't know if I could handle all this alone." Sarah smiled, lightly touching his arm. "You don't have to. We're in this together, remember? One day at a time." That night marked the beginning of a new phase, not only for Emma, who slowly began her healing process, but also for Andrew and Sarah, who rediscovered a partnership that transcended the boundaries of their previous relationship. As the city fell asleep under the starry sky, 3 hearts began to find a new rhythm, a new balance. The path would be long with ups and downs, but for the first time in a long time, Andrew felt they were heading in the right direction. 3 months had passed since that rainy Thursday that had changed everything. Autumn had given way to the Colorado winter, mild during the day, cool at night, with skies of an intense blue that seemed to reflect the positive changes in the Mitchell family's life. Sarah, fulfilling her promise, had rented an apartment in the same complex as Andrew. Not on the same floor, both agreed they needed their own space, but close enough for Emma to transit freely between the 2 residences. The girl had her own room in each apartment, with similar versions of her favorite toys and clothes, creating a continuity that gave her security. Professionally, both Andrew and Sarah had made significant adjustments. He had delegated more responsibilities to Richard and a new executive director, Gabriela Santos, a brilliant professional who had brought a welcome balance to the team. Sarah, in turn, divided her time between Chicago and Denver, adapting to a hybrid work model that many of her colleagues were already considering adopting. Emma attended sessions with Dr. Wilson twice a week, now reduced to a single weekly visit. Her progress was visible. She smiled more, had resumed making friends at school, and the nightmares that had tormented her in the first weeks had diminished considerably. That Saturday morning, Andrew prepared coffee while Emma, seated at the kitchen table, drew with concentration. "What are you drawing, Princess?" he asked, placing a mug of hot chocolate near her. Emma raised the drawing with pride. It was a colorful representation of 3 people holding hands, clearly her in the middle, with Andrew and Sarah at the sides, in front of something that looked like a treehouse. "It's us visiting the treehouse at Grandpa's ranch. Remember, you promised we would go there during vacation?" Andrew smiled, examining the drawing with genuine attention. The lines were firmer, the colors more vibrant, far from those somber drawings he had found months ago. Dr. Wilson had explained that Emma's artistic evolution was an important indicator of her emotional recovery process. "Of course I remember. It's only a month until the July vacation. Grandpa Tony is already preparing everything for our visit." The doorbell rang, announcing Sarah's arrival. She entered wearing sportswear, her hair tied in a casual ponytail. "Good morning, family. Ready for our bike ride?" Emma ran to hug her mother, showing her the drawing. Sarah praised it effusively, carefully storing it in her bag to display in her office. It was a simple but significant ritual. Each of her daughter's drawings was treated as a valuable work of art, gradually restoring the girl's self-confidence. After breakfast, they headed to the Cherry Creek bike path, one of Denver's landmarks. The day was perfect, with the winter sun warming without burning. Emma pedaled her new bicycle, a joint birthday gift from her parents, between Andrew and Sarah, her face illuminated by genuine joy. "Look how fast I am, Daddy," she exclaimed, pedaling enthusiastically. "You really are, Princess. Soon you'll be participating in the Tour de France," he joked, staying close to ensure her safety. Sarah observed the interaction with a smile. The last few weeks had revealed an Andrew different from the one she had been married to, more patient, more present, less obsessed with control and perfection. Adversity, somehow, had broken layers of armor he didn't even know he possessed. They stopped for a picnic by the creek, under the shade of a large tree. Emma played with other children she had met right there, while Andrew and Sarah talked about their daughter's progress. "Teacher Luciana told me Emma is volunteering to answer questions in class again," commented Sarah, "and she's less anxious about assessments." "I noticed she doesn't ask anymore if she's doing it right all the time," added Andrew. "Dr. Wilson says that's an important sign that she's regaining her internal security." Sarah nodded, watching her daughter running and laughing. "Sometimes I wonder if all this would have happened if I had been more present, if I hadn't accepted that international project." "Don't blame yourself," Andrew gently interrupted. "I was physically closer and didn't notice. The truth is that we both trusted someone too much who didn't deserve it." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but reflective. The last few months had brought not only a rapprochement as parents, but a rediscovery of each other as people. It was as if they were getting to know each other again, without the pressures and expectations that had marked their marriage. "Have you decided about the San Francisco proposal?" asked Sarah, changing the subject. Andrew sighed. An American company had offered a strategic partnership with Horizon Tech, which would require frequent trips to California. Before he would have accepted without hesitation, it was an exceptional opportunity for international expansion. Now the decision seemed much more complex. "I'm still evaluating. Gabriella could take on most of the negotiations, but at some point, I would need to be present personally. Emma is more stable now," pondered Sarah, "and I could adjust my schedule to be more present when you need to travel." Andrew observed his ex-wife with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. Despite her own professional responsibilities, Sarah always found ways to accommodate the family's needs. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." The moment was interrupted by Emma, who came running back, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mom, Dad, can I have an ice cream? There's a cart over there." "Of course you can," replied Sarah. "Would you like me to go with you?" "No need. I can go by myself. The cart is right there," insisted Emma, pointing to an ice cream vendor a few meters away. Andrew and Sarah exchanged glances. It was the first time Emma had asked to do something by herself in a public space since the incident with Jessica. A small step, but significant. "All right," Andrew agreed, handing his daughter a few bills. "We're watching you from here." As Emma walked away, determinedly heading toward the ice cream cart, Sarah smiled. "This is new." "And scary," confessed Andrew. "Part of me wants to run after her." "It's the balance we need to find now," reflected Sarah, "protecting her without suffocating her independence." They observed in silence as Emma placed her order, paid, and politely thanked the ice cream vendor. Her satisfied smile as she returned, with the chocolate ice cream, was a reward in itself. The rest of the day passed peacefully. They visited the Denver Art Museum, where Emma was enchanted by an interactive contemporary art exhibition. At the end of the afternoon, they returned to the complex, physically and emotionally satisfied. "Will you join us for dinner tonight?" invited Andrew as they stored the bicycles. "I'd love to, but I have a video conference with the Chicago team," replied Sarah. "How about tomorrow? We can watch that movie Emma has been wanting to see." Before they could finalize their plans, Andrew's cell phone rang. It was his lawyer, Mr. Matthews. "Sorry to bother you on the weekend, Andrew, but we have news about the Jessica Winters case." Andrew stepped away a few paces while Sarah distracted Emma. "What news?" "I received a contact from her lawyer. They're proposing an out-of-court settlement. They want to avoid the case reaching the courts." The news wasn't entirely unexpected. The civil lawsuit they had filed against Jessica for moral damages was moving slowly, as is common in the legal system. In parallel, they had made a formal complaint to the Education Board, which could result in the revocation of her professional license. "What kind of agreement?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "She would sign a term committing to never work with children again, would undergo mandatory psychological treatment, and would pay compensation that would be deposited into a fund for Emma's future." Andrew reflected for a moment. His first reaction was to refuse. He wanted to see Jessica publicly answer for what she had done. But a trial would mean exposing Emma, making her relive traumas during testimonies, subjecting the family to prolonged emotional strain. "I need to talk to Sarah before deciding anything," he finally responded. "I'll call you tomorrow, Matthews." As he hung up, he noticed Sarah was watching him attentively. Emma had already gone up to her apartment, eager to bathe her new doll. "Problems?" asked Sarah when he approached. "Not exactly. Jessica is proposing a settlement." Sarah listened attentively as he explained the terms. Her face, normally expressive, remained neutral until he finished. "What do you think?" Andrew finally asked. "I think we need to consider what's best for Emma, not what would satisfy our sense of justice," she replied after a pause. "A trial would be draining for everyone, especially for her." It was exactly what Andrew was thinking, but hearing Sarah express the same thought brought unexpected relief. Once again, they were in sync when it came to their daughter's well-being. "And what about the compensation money?" he questioned. "I don't want anything from her." "We can donate it to an institution that works with child abuse prevention," suggested Sarah. "Transform something negative into positive." Andrew nodded, feeling lighter. "I'll communicate our decision to Matthews tomorrow." As they went up to their respective apartments, Andrew reflected on how that painful experience had paradoxically strengthened family bonds. He and Sarah now functioned as a more efficient team than when they were married. Emma, despite the trauma, demonstrated a resilience that filled them with pride. The next day, as agreed, they gathered in Andrew's apartment for Family Sunday. Sarah prepared the house specialty, an eggplant lasagna that even Emma, normally resistant to vegetables, loved. Andrew took care of dessert, a flan following his grandmother's recipe. After lunch, while Emma napped on the couch, exhausted after a morning of games, Andrew and Sarah talked in low voices on the balcony. "I called Matthews," he informed. "We accepted the agreement, with the condition that the money be donated to the Child Protection Foundation. He will draft the terms." Sarah nodded, looking at their sleeping daughter through the glass door. "I think we made the right decision. Emma has already been through too much. We need to look forward now." Speaking of looking forward, Andrew hesitated, suddenly nervous. "I've been thinking about something over the last few days." "About?" "About us. This new dynamic we've created. You living nearby, the three of us spending so much time together. Emma is happy, and we also seem to be." Sarah studied his face carefully. "What exactly are you suggesting, Andrew?" "Nothing specific yet," he hastened to clarify. "Just maybe we could explore this possibility of being more than just friendly co-parents." A slow smile formed on Sarah's lips. "Are you suggesting we try again, the two of us?" "Not like before," explained Andrew. "We were different people back then with different priorities. Now, after everything we've been through, I don't know. Maybe we can build something new, something better." Sarah didn't respond immediately. Her gaze alternated between Andrew and Emma, as if evaluating all the possible implications of that suggestion. "We could start slowly," she finally suggested. "Her dinner, just the two of us. See where it leads us." Before Andrew could respond, Emma woke up, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Is it time for the movie yet?" she asked, her voice still hoarse from sleep. "Almost, Princess," replied Sarah, standing up to help her daughter settle in. "Why don't you go brush your teeth while we prepare the popcorn?" As Emma headed to the bathroom, Sarah cast one last look at Andrew, a look loaded with possibilities and an emotion he hadn't seen in a long time. That night, sitting on the couch with Emma between them, watching an animated film about a family of superheroes, Andrew felt a strange sense of déjà vu. It was like going back in time, to when they were a traditional family but with a fundamental difference. Now both he and Sarah were truly present, not just physically, but emotionally. Emma fell asleep before the end of the movie, her head resting on her mother's lap, her feet on her father. A picture of domestic peace that months ago would have seemed impossible. "Should we wake her up?" whispered Sarah when the credits began to roll. Andrew shook his head, smiling. "Let her sleep. We can stay like this a little longer." And they did, two adults rediscovering dormant feelings, a child regaining her security, a family reinventing itself. The lights of Denver twinkled through the windows, silent witnesses to a transformation that was just beginning. A year had passed since that rainy Thursday that transformed the Mitchell family's life. It was an autumn afternoon in Denver, with the sky painted in shades of orange and gold, when Andrew parked his car in the garage of the new house, a spacious and welcoming construction in the Cherry Hills neighborhood, with a large garden and a perfect tree for the treehouse Emma had been dreaming of. The move to the house had occurred 3 months ago, after months of careful planning. It wasn't just a change of physical space, but the materialization of a new phase in their lives. "Daddy, you arrived just in time!" exclaimed Emma, running along the stone path that led to the entrance. At 7 years old, she radiated a confidence and joy that made Andrew's heart fill with gratitude. "In time for what, Princess?" he asked, picking her up despite her protests that she was already too big for that. "Mom is finishing the cake, and Grandma Teresa is teaching me how to make brigadeiros. Come quick!" Andrew followed his daughter inside the house, where the aroma of vanilla and chocolate filled the air. In the spacious kitchen, Sarah and her mother, Teresa, worked in harmony preparing sweets for Emma's birthday party, which would take place the next day. "Look who finally arrived," commented Sarah with a smile, her face lightly stained with flour. "I thought you were going to spend the whole afternoon in that meeting." "And Mrs. Teresa's famous brigadeiros?" "Never." Andrew approached, kissing Sarah softly on the lips, a gesture that now seemed as natural as breathing. Their reconciliation had surprised many, but for those who knew them well, it made perfect sense. The dinner alone that marked the beginning had been followed by others, each revealing new facets of one another. They discovered that the experiences lived separately had transformed them into more mature people, more aware of their needs and limitations. 3 months after that first dinner, on a weekend at Andrew's parents' ranch, he had made the request, not for marriage, but for a genuine chance to rebuild something together, without the pressures and expectations of the past. Sarah had accepted with one condition, that they maintain their professional and personal identities while building this new relationship. "How was the meeting with the investors?" asked Sarah, while finalizing the chocolate cake frosting. "Better than expected. We closed the deal for the expansion of the renewable energy division. This was another significant development of the last year. Andrew had redirected part of Horizon Tech's business to sustainable solutions, inspired by a casual comment from Emma about saving trees and animals. What began as a secondary project had become one of the most promising areas of the company. "Great news," approved Sarah. "And what about the trip to Vancouver next month?" "Confirmed." "Confirmed. I already spoke with Dr. Wilson, and she thinks it will be an enriching experience for Emma to know another country." The psychologist continued to be an important presence in their lives, now more as a family counselor than a therapist. Emma's individual sessions had ended 2 months ago, with the professional declaring that the girl demonstrated exceptional resilience and healthy emotional development. "Emma, why don't you show your father what we prepared in the playroom?" suggested Mrs. Teresa, realizing the couple needed a moment alone. The girl needed no other encouragement, pulling her father by the hand enthusiastically. "Come see, Daddy. We made a model of our trip." When Emma and Andrew left, Sarah approached her mother with a grateful smile. "You always know when we need to talk." "Years of practice, my daughter," replied Mrs. Teresa with a complicit wink. "Your father and I also had our phases of important conversations." Sarah laughed, remembering how her parents, married for almost 40 years, still maintained that special sync. That was what she and Andrew were rebuilding now. Not a perfect marriage, but a solid partnership, based on mutual respect and conscious love. "I'm thinking of accepting that project in Lisbon," she revealed, while finishing arranging the brigadeiros, in colorful forms, for 3 months. "How will the 3 of you manage?" "We talked about it yesterday. Andrew can work remotely for a few weeks and bring Emma to stay with me. In the other weeks, she stays here with him and we take turns. It's not ideal, but..." But it's real life, completed Mrs. Teresa with wisdom. Perfect relationships don't exist, daughter. There are imperfect people who choose to do their best every day. In the playroom, Emma proudly showed the model she had built with her grandmother, a detailed representation of Vancouver, with cardboard mountains, clay trees, and even a small functional cable car made with string and matchboxes. "Will we see real whales, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes shining with expectation. "If we're lucky, yes," replied Andrew, admiring his daughter's artistic work. "But even if we don't see whales, I'm sure it will be an amazing trip." Emma nodded, adjusting a small clay figure that represented the family itself. "Dr. Wilson said we are now a rebuilt family. What does that mean?" Andrew smiled at the direct question, so characteristic of Emma. "It means our family is like that puzzle we put together last month, remember? The one that had some missing pieces and we replaced them with others we made?" "I remember. It turned out different from the picture on the box, but it was even cooler." "Exactly. Our family isn't like the one that appears in margarine commercials, the same as all others. It's unique, special in our own way. We had some challenges. Some pieces were lost along the way, but we found others that fit even better." Emma reflected for a moment, with that seriousness that sometimes surprised the adults around her. Like Miss Jessica, she was a piece that didn't fit right. Andrew felt a tightness in his chest. Jessica's name was rarely mentioned, although they knew through the lawyer that she had complied with the terms of the agreement, moving to another city and abandoning her career as a child educator. "Yes, something like that," he agreed carefully. "Sometimes people enter our lives for a time and then follow their paths. The important thing is that we learn from each experience." "I learned that I should always speak up when something makes me sad or scared," declared Emma with conviction. "And that's one of the most important lessons in life, did you know?" Andrew hugged his daughter, feeling a mixture of pride and emotion. "You're very brave, Emma." "You're brave too, Daddy. And Mommy too." The sound of footsteps interrupted the moment. Sarah appeared at the door, wiping her hands on an apron with sunflower prints. "Am I interrupting some philosophical conversation?" she joked. "Emma was showing me her incredible Vancouver model," replied Andrew, standing up. "We have a future architect in the family, it seems." "Or an engineer," added Sarah. "That functional cable car was her idea, not Grandma's." Emma smiled, proud. "Can I be both, an architect and an engineer?" "You can be whatever you want, my love," assured Sarah. "Now how about we finalize the preparations for your party? The guests arrive at 3 tomorrow and we still have a lot to organize." As Emma ran ahead, going down the stairs with the inexhaustible energy of childhood, Sarah gently held Andrew's arm. "Is everything okay? You two seem to be having a serious conversation." Emma mentioned Jessica, he explained in a low voice, but in a surprisingly mature way, as if it were just another learning experience in her life. Sarah nodded, understanding. "Dr. Wilson always says that children process traumas differently than adults. Emma is integrating what happened into her life narrative without letting it define her. Sometimes I wonder who is more resilient, her or us." "Probably her," smiled Sarah. "Children have a natural capacity to move forward that we adults often lose along the way." Night fell over Denver, bringing with it a cool breeze that made the living room curtains dance softly. Mrs. Teresa had left after dinner, promising to return early the next day to help with the final preparations for the party. Emma, exhausted after a day of activities, had fallen asleep while Andrew read her favorite story, an old fable about a bird that built its nest in different trees until finding the one that withstood the storms. On the back porch, Andrew and Sarah shared a glass of wine, contemplating the starry sky and the garden illuminated by small decorative lights, a project they had carried out together the previous month. "Can you believe everything that's happened in a year?" asked Sarah, comfortably reclining on his shoulder. "Sometimes it feels like that rainy Thursday was yesterday," confessed Andrew. "Other times, I feel like it was in another life." Sarah nodded, perfectly understanding the feeling. "You know, what impresses me most? How something so painful opened the way for so much good. Like us two? Like us three, she gently corrected. This version of family we've built, imperfect and authentic. Andrew smiled, wrapping her in his arms. Imperfect and authentic. That was exactly how he saw his life now. Without the obsessive search for perfection that had marked his years of professional rise, without the appearances he had valued so much in the past. I received an interesting proposal today, he commented, changing the subject. The State University wants me to give some lectures on business ethics and social responsibility. Sarah raised her eyebrows, surprised. Professor Mitchell, I like how that sounds. It would be just once a week. I'm thinking of accepting. Who knows, I might discover a new vocation. I think it would be great. You've always had a talent for communicating complex ideas in an accessible way. Andrew had never considered teaching before, but in recent months he had been discovering new interests and abilities, another unexpected transformation the last year had brought. And what about us? He asked after a moment of comfortable silence. Any regrets about having tried again? Sarah looked at him with those eyes that always seemed to see beyond the surface. We're not trying again, Andrew. We're creating something completely new, remember? And no regrets. She was right, as often happened. It wasn't a repetition of the past, but an entirely new journey, with the baggage of experiences, good and bad, they had accumulated. You know what Emma told me the other day, continued Sarah, that now she understands why we named her Emma. Because of my grandmother. Not just that. She said the name suits her because now everything is clear in our family. No secrets, no pretending everything is fine when it's not. Andrew felt a lump in his throat. The wisdom that sometimes emanated from his daughter left him speechless. She's right, he finally managed to say. Transparency has become our most important value, hasn't it? Sarah nodded, finishing her wine. In all aspects, at work, at home, in our relationship, clarity even when it's uncomfortable. A distant thunder announced the approach of a storm, common at that time of year in Colorado. The aroma of wet earth was already beginning to fill the air, bringing memories of that other storm, a year ago, that had set them on this journey. We should go inside, suggested Andrew, observing the lightning that illuminated the horizon. Not yet, asked Sarah, holding his hand. I want to see the rain begin. I've always liked storms. They remained like that side by side, as the first drops began to fall, first sparse, then in a constant and comforting rhythm. There was something poetic about that moment. The same rain that had once brought painful revelations now found them strengthened, united, ready to face any storm that life presented them. The next morning the day dawned clean and fresh after the night rain, perfect for Emma's birthday party. The house was taken over by the excitement of final preparations, colorful balloons, tables decorated with the Forest Adventures theme, and the impressive cake Sarah had prepared with so much care. Emma, wearing the green dress she had specially chosen for the occasion, supervised everything with the seriousness of a little hostess, giving opinions on the arrangement of sweets and the placement of toys in the garden. The first guests began to arrive punctually at 3 in the afternoon, family, members, friends, from school neighbors. The house filled with laughter, animated conversations, music. Emma ran from one side to the other, introducing friends to grandparents, showing her favorite toys, savoring every moment of her special day. In a quieter corner of the garden, Andrew observed the scene with a sense of fullness he had never imagined possible. Sarah approached, handing him a glass of lemonade. "What are you thinking about with that smile?" she asked, following his gaze to Emma, who was now organizing a treasure hunt game with her friends. "About how life comes full circle," he replied. "A year ago, we were in the middle of a storm, literal and figurative. Today, this." He made a gesture encompassing the party, the house, the gathered family. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, a gesture that had become habitual between them. "You know what Dr. Wilson told me the last time we talked? That Emma was lucky." "Lucky?" repeated Andrew, surprised. "After everything she went through?" "Lucky to have parents who, even making mistakes, were willing to completely change their lives to protect and support her. Lucky to grow up in an environment where it's safe to talk about difficult feelings, where vulnerability isn't seen as weakness. The words touched Andrew deeply. Perhaps it was true. Perhaps in some paradoxical way, the traumatic experience had opened the way for a more authentic, more emotionally connected type of family than they would have been under normal circumstances. "Mum! Dad, come see the treasure we found," called Emma, interrupting his thoughts. Together they joined their daughter and her friends, who had discovered a small decorated box buried under the large tree in the garden, part of the game Sarah had prepared in advance. As Emma opened the box enthusiastically, revealing small prizes for all participants, Andrew felt a certainty crystallize in his heart. The true treasure wasn't in any box, in any professional or material achievement. It was right there in his daughter's crystalline laughter, in the complicit look exchanged with Sarah, in the strengthened bonds that now united them. That rainy Thursday a year ago had been the beginning of an unexpected journey. A journey of pain and healing, of losses and rediscoveries, of shadows and finally of light. A journey that had taught them the most fundamental of lessons, that true shelter is not found in the walls of a house or in the appearances of a perfect life, but in the courage to be authentic, to face storms together, and to rebuild, whenever necessary, from what truly matters. Emma looked at her parents, her face illuminated by the joy of the present moment, free from the ghosts of the past. And in that smile, Andrew and Sarah saw reflected the promise of a future built not on illusions,